Mr. Rees-Mogg, good morning to you. Thanks very much for being with us. I suppose first thing I should say is you must be thrilled that your sister is now going to the European Parliament for the Brexit Party.
Well, I'm absolutely delighted that my sister's been elected. I think our late father would be so enormously proud of what she's achieved. It's a great thing to have the confidence of your fellow citizens and be sent to represent the nation abroad. I think her achievement is terrific. I just wish she were in the Tory party, but that's more our fault than hers.
What about now where this leaves the whole question of Brexit? You heard doubtless the Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt, one of the leadership contenders, saying on the radio this morning, look, actually this is in a sense almost the Gordian knot we can't unloose, because if I go in and say to Parliament as an incoming Prime Minister, right, we're going to leave on 31st of October, despite the fact the withdrawal agreement hasn't been passed, there's no other deal on the table from Brussels, there will be effectively a general election and the Tories will be out.
Well, the issue with the Gordian knot was that Alexander the Great took out his sword and cut through it. And that is, I think, what will have to happen. There was no possibility of untying it. And that probably does mean leaving without a deal. And then saying to Conservative MPs, which do you love more, the European Union or Jeremy Corbyn? Because if they vote no confidence in a Conservative government, first of all, they will be excommunicating themselves from the Conservative Party and not able to stand as Conservative candidates in a future election, but they would be putting Jeremy Corbyn into office. How many Conservative MPs really want Jeremy Corbyn to be Prime Minister?
We heard at the weekend the Chancellor saying that he could not possibly vote to support a Conservative Prime Minister. This is the serving Chancellor of the Exchequer coming to the House of Commons and calling for a no-deal Brexit. So clearly there are Conservative MPs who would say we're putting our country before our party.
Well, the Chancellor of the Exchequer should remember that he voted in favour of the Article 50 Act and he voted in favour of the Withdrawal Act, both of which provided in UK and EU law that we would leave with or without a deal. So he must have forgotten what he did before, an act of absent-mindedness on his part.
Let me ask you about Mr. Hunt's, what I suppose in the terminology we now use would be called a bold and generous offer, and this is that he wants a big team of people, a big team of talents to negotiate with the European Union. Would you be willing to be part of such a team?
Well, I don't know that I would count as any talent, but as a Conservative, I would naturally support that I'm backing Boris Johnson for the leadership. Any Conservative leader who won and would help in any way that I could. It was, I thought, surprising that my old friend Rory Stewart said that he wouldn't serve in a Boris cabinet. That's not the right spirit to be entering these sorts of elections. The members of the party will decide who is to lead the party, and then it is the duty of Conservative members of Parliament to give that new leader a fair run.
Do you think Jeremy Hunt has an idea that might be one that Boris Johnson, if he were to become Prime Minister, would want to take up, the idea that you have a kind of a team of people that properly reflects the range of views as a way of perhaps of dealing with some of this real corrosion in trust that there's been? And I'm sure it worries you as a Democrat and as a serving politician, the real corrosion of trust between people who wanted to remain in the European Union and those who want to leave the European Union. It's getting to a point where people can barely say a civil word to one another. Would this be one way of saying, actually, we are all in this together. We are a country whose everybody's interests will have to be met, whatever the outcome, and therefore the negotiation process ought to reflect that?
I think the problem is we've had a process going on for 3 years and nothing has happened, and that therefore people on both sides of the argument are feeling very disillusioned with their respective parties or the parties that they used to support, and that breakdown in trust that you refer to is very strong. The history of ministries of all the talents has not been hugely successful because you find they don't always agree and don't have a unified programme. And I think the real pressure is to ensure that we leave on the 31st of October and deliver on the referendum results. So I think it's a very well-intentioned offer, and I think it's right that all the leadership candidates should seek to unite both the country and the Conservative Party. But I think there may not be time to put together this sort of group by the 31st of October.
Have you got reassurance, given that you're supporting Boris Johnson for the leadership, that Mr. Johnson, were he to become Conservative leader and therefore Prime Minister, that he would take that view that we have to leave on the 31st of October, there are no ifs, no buts, or would he be prepared to allow time for a further attempt at negotiation?
Boris Johnson has made it completely clear that we must leave on the 31st of October, and that yes, of course he would be willing to do a deal with the EU, but if it sticks by its intransigent message that there's no possible change to the withdrawal agreement, then we would leave on WTO terms, which is nothing to be frightened of. That lots of countries around the world trade on a WTO basis. We can prosper on that basis. We would set our own tariffs. We could have cheaper food, clothing and footwear straight away by getting rid of the protectionist anti-trade tariffs that the EU imposes. And it would be very good for the British people, and it would provide certainty. And I think once there's certainty, the country will begin to reunite.
Jacob Rees-Mogg MP, thank you very much.